Some of us are queer, and we need to chat about a very important topic. Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Sex Here and Now. As always, I am your host, Matt Lockman, a licensed clinical therapist and ASECT certified sex therapist. How's it going? You doing okay? Drinking enough water? Getting enough rest? I hope so. I know something that may be concerning you, and that is the paralyzing fear that your sex life may fall apart. Well, actually, I hope not, but it could. Hence why I wanted to spill some wisdom on what I have learned over my 8 years as a sex therapist that can help you if your sex life does truly fall apart. Let's go. When your sex life starts to fall apart, the worst thing you can do is panic. Panic makes people jump to conclusions like something must be wrong. Something must be wrong with me. Something must be wrong with my partner, or this relationship must be broken beyond repair. I know from personal experience that when my sex life with a partner would start to become stale, it would be all hands on deck. But here we are learning about this now. So instead of panicking, I want you to slow down. And the first thing you need to do is turn inward. Before you start pointing fingers outward, it is important to ask what actually feels off for you. Is it you? Is it your partner? Is it the relationship dynamic itself? Is it the stage of life you're in right now? Is it stress, exhaustion, burnout, grief, or resentment? Is it the fact that you are a successful human and doing that is hard? Or is it the larger culture we live in? Because we exist in a world that is wildly sex negative, deeply confusing about intimacy, and constantly sending us mixed messages about what sex is supposed to look like. If it is you, that is not a failure. That is an invitation. And I mean that genuinely. If you feel disconnected from your own desire, your own body, or your own sense of pleasure, then the work starts with reconnecting to yourself before trying to fix partnered sex. That reconnection can look a lot of different ways. Here are some of my favorites that I give to my clients. Start with listening to a podcast like this one. If you aren't a podcast person, which is dumb for me to say because you are listening to a podcast right now, it might look like reading books about sex, desire, and relationships. From there, move on to having more honest conversations with trusted friends. We need to normalize that sex ebb and flows over time, and talking with friends may be able to show us just that. It might look like finding resources that actually speak to you instead of shame you. And yes, I'm talking about doing an edit, a purge of your social media for all those awful influencers who are telling you that you are too fat, too broke, or too unworthy. And for many people, it looks like working with a therapist who understands sexuality and intimacy without pathologizing it. Part of reconnecting with yourself can also mean exploring your relationship with pleasure. Start thinking about what feels pleasurable for you in a non erotic sense and notice how that feels. If I read, listen to music, or work out and I feel good, how does that show up in my body? That, my friend, is pleasure. And now we have to learn to help it show up in an erotic sense. For some people, that includes mindful masturbation, not performative masturbation, not rushed masturbation, not porn thrashing around masturbation, but slowing down and getting curious about what actually feels good to you now, not what used to feel good, not what you think should feel good, but what your body responds to today. Desire changes over time. Bodies change over time. Stress hormones, mental health, and trauma all impact how pleasure shows up. Learning how to give yourself pleasure again is a skill, not a given. And when you know what feels good for you, it becomes much easier to communicate that to a partner. Now, if your sex life issues involve your partner, this is where things start to feel uncomfortable. I tell my clients all the time, it is not a matter of if passion and sex fade in a relationship, it is when. And for most couples and people in relationships, that shift happens somewhere after the honeymoon phase. That phase where novelty is high, hormones are firing, and sex feels effortless does not last forever. And it's not supposed to. Sex should not be the number one thing on our minds all the time. We have jobs, friendships, families, responsibilities, and lives. Hell, we have so many TV shows to watch. Where am I going to fit in another binge of heated rivalry? But when sex and intimacy start to fall apart completely, it can feel scary. It can feel rejecting. It can feel like a threat to the very relationship itself. That is often when people shut down, avoid the topic, or start blaming each other instead of getting curious together. This is where vulnerability comes in. This is where communication comes in. Now, I know vulnerability is scary, but remember, if you can't be vulnerable with your partners, who the hell can you be vulnerable with? We want these conversations to be honest, awkward, and imperfect when we are exploring the topics of sex and intimacy. I often encourage people to do a sexual check in or sexual state of the union conversations. These are intentional conversations where the goal is to not fix everything in one sitting, but instead to understand what is happening for each person without defensiveness. We have to start prioritizing sex and intimacy if we want it to feel better and more connected. And I want to be very clear. Nothing about sex and long-term relationships is natural. Hear me. I know that idea gets thrown around a lot, but it is misleading and harmful. Sex is learned. Desire is learned. Communication is learned. What works for us is shaped through experience, through trial and error, through moments of connection and moments of disappointment. I wasn't born knowing how to give head or moan or flip my hair. The relationships who have satisfying sex lives are not the people who magically got it right. They're the people who kept learning. Now, we got to talk about one of the most effective ways of reconnecting this sexual energy again. And I'm talking about scheduling intimacy. Yes, scheduling intimacy. I can already hear all of you moaning and being like, oh my God, Matt, not scheduling intimacy. There couldn't be anything worse. I hear it all the time. Matt, I don't want sex to feel like a calendar appointment. If we have to schedule sex, that must mean we are in really bad shape. And it sucks that people think that. That belief is doing so much damage. Scheduling intimacy does not mean your relationship is failing. It usually means you care enough about your relationship to protect time for reconnection. When we schedule work meetings, doctor's appointments, gym sessions, and social plans, we are acknowledging that those things matter. Intimacy deserves the same level of respect. Scheduling intimacy does not mean it has to be boring or rigid. You can pick a general time window. You can pick a day. You can leave room for surprise. You can use that time to explore, to slow down, to laugh, or to just be close without pressure. And if sex does not happen every single time, that is okay too. The point is showing up for each other intentionally. This is also where novelty and exploration can come into play. If your sex life has become predictable or routine, adding new elements can help reignite curiosity. That does not mean you have to suddenly become someone you are not. It can be as simple as changing the environment, trying new forms of touch, introducing fantasy, or having conversations about desires you have never shared before. For some people, kink can be a way to explore power, sensation, or playfulness in a consensual and intentional way. For others, It might just mean trying something slightly outside the usual script. Now, let me get to my favorite tip, and I cannot emphasize this enough. Flirting matters. Flirting is not just something that happens at the beginning of a relationship. It is a skill that needs to be practiced. Flirting can look like playful texts, lingering eye contact, compliments that are not tied to sex, or teasing that builds anticipation. Dirty talk is also a skill. It is learned. It feels awkward at first for many people, for most people, for all of us, for me, right? It does feel awkward at first, especially if you did not grow up in a household or culture where sex was openly discussed. But awkward does not mean wrong. It just means new. All of these things, communication, vulnerability, scheduling intimacy, flirting, erotic exploration, all of these are skills. Skills need practice. They need patience. They need room for imperfection. You do not get better at intimacy by avoiding it or hoping it fixes itself. You get better by engaging with it, even when it feels uncomfortable. So if your sex life feels off, take a breath, get curious, look inward, look relationally, and remember that intimacy is not something you either have or do not have. It is something you build, revisit, and relearn over and over again throughout your life. And if all else fails, call me. Well, don't. Email me and let me know. I am always here to help. Until next time. Sex Here and Now is written and recorded by me, Matt Lockman. For more resources, education, or support, you can find me on all social platforms at Cleveland Sex Therapy. Thanks for being here, and as always, stay curious.